Hey there, my name is Fumilayo and I welcome you to day 36 of the 100 Days Programming Challenge. Yesterday I introduced you to functions. Today we're going a step further to talk more about advanced concepts in functions. So let's begin. 36, day 36. Welcome, day 36. Yesterday we spoke about functions. I introduced you to functions. You learned how to define a function, how to call a function, etc. So why not go a step further and talk about some advanced concepts in functions? So we'd cover concepts like the default arguments, the keyword arguments, the ARGs and the KWARGs. I don't know if you're supposed to pronounce this word. I don't know how to okay. KWARG is what I would call it. So you'd also learn about scope and how variables behave inside and outside the functions and etc. So let's begin. So the first thing that we will begin with is using default parameters. What is a default parameter, you might ask? Default parameters is when you specify like default values to your parameters in case no argument is passed. Let me show you. So imagine I'm creating this function. Great. I have to stop saying imagine. We're not imagining it. I'm doing it. So this is a function, dev great. And see, I am assigning default values. Usually sometimes you might write name here, and then when you're calling the function, you then put the value to your parameters inside this function. But when you set default values in your function, then you don't have to put it when you're calling the function. Let me run this and you see we get hello guest. Now let me show you how we did it yesterday, still with this function. We did not use default parameters. So now if I remove guest and then I now put the guest in the bracket, see, can you see the difference between the first and the second? In the first, we assign default values to our parameters inside the function that we defined, while the second one, we did not do that. We then put the value while we were calling the function. So this is default for parameters. You can assign default parameters in case no argument is passed, or you can put it while you're calling the function. Depends on what you want. So keyword argument is what is next. Keyword argument, there's when functions are called with arguments in order to use keyword arguments. These are arguments that are passed explicitly by mentioning the parameter's name, and then the order doesn't matter. When you're calling like a regular function, when you define a regular function and then you want to call it, if it has more than one argument, then you have to make sure if you're calling a function and you have dev this and you have name and age, while you're also defining the function, it has to follow that process. So the way the parameters are arranged in while you're defining the function must be the same way while you're calling the function. That is what it's usually done. But when you specify the keyword argument, then you don't necessarily, the other doesn't necessarily matter. I will show you both examples. See here, I've defined my function and see I have name and age, and then I'm printing using an f string. Yeah. And then when I'm now calling the function, you see, rather than just having the name and the age, I actually gave it the name by using the keyword argument. So I'm using the keyword. So it doesn't matter the order at which is it because I've already specified that this is age and this is name. So order doesn't matter. Name can come first, age can come first. The order doesn't matter. So you see, it works fine. Now let me show you the other way if we don't specify the keyword argument. So now if I remove age and then I remove name, we've said that this is name and this is age. That means this has to be name and this has to be age. And when I run it, you see, my name is 25 and I am Alice years old. So if you do not use the keyword argument, you have to make sure that the order matters. That so name should come first. So name would come first and then the age would come second. And then when you run it, you have it correctly. But when you use the keyword argument, You do not have to worry about the order. So you can see the difference between both, that you can assign default values or you can use keyword argument. The next thing we will discuss is the ARGs and the KWARGs. So in Python, these are special syntax that are used for passing a variable number of arguments to a function. So it allows you to pass more than one argument, and they allow for more flexibility in the functions, enabling them to accept a varying number of position and keyword arguments. If you're wondering what position arguments are, they are the most basic type of argument, and the order, like we spoke here, that the order at which you pass them, they matter, and you must pass position argument in the correct order, otherwise the function would not work as expected. While for keyword argument, it allows you to specify, that's what we spoke here, that it allows you to specify the exact keyword that you're using in your function. So let me show you example of the ARGs and the KWARG. The people actually pronounce the word, or did they just call it ARGs? Let me know in the comments. So this is example of the ARG. So it allows you to pass multiple arguments, a variable number of positional arguments. And then we'll want to calculate the sum of all our arguments. So when we run this, we then get 6. And then it treats it like a tuple. It collects it like a tuple. While for the KWAG, since we're dealing with the keyword argument, you see we have this kind of looks like a dictionary where we have our key and then the value. So this looks like a dictionary, for example. So that's exactly what KWLG does. It treats it like a dictionary, allows you to pass a variable number of key arguments, and the arguments are stored in a dictionary where the keys are the parameter's name, that is the age and the name, and then the values are then the argument passed. So let me show you an example of KWARG. So this is an example. So you see we're still passing in our name and age, and then it's treating it like a dictionary, taking the key and then the value. The key here will be name, and then the value here will be Alice. Key here is age and value is 25. And then I want to now print the key and the value. So when I run this, we have our name, which is see our key, and then our value, which is Alice. So this is a simple example of how the ARGS and the KWARGS work. So next we'll be talking about variable scope. There's an entire video where we talked about variables, local variable, global variables, and the rest. That was on day 18. So I'll just talk about it briefly here since we're talking about advanced concept in function. So in what are variable scope? Variables defined inside a function are local to that function, while global variables can be accessed inside functions, but they require a global keyword to modify it. So now let me show you a simple example with explanation. So imagine we define a variable out here. You see this variable is not in our function, it's a standalone variable. This is known as our global variable, and it has a value of x. And then I now define my function, which is modify global. So what I want to do is to modify my global variable. And how do I do this? First, I declare that we're referring to the global variable. So I'm declaring that I'm referring to x, which is my global variable, and then I am changing the x to 20. So then when I call the mobile modify global, it then runs the function and modifies my global, and when I print x, I get my new value, that is 20. So that is the variable scope for our advanced concept. So inside the modify global, the line global x is telling the Python that the x variable that was defined in the global and then we want to update it into 20 to 20 from 10. And then when we call the function, we're then saying, oh, now it's time to update the global variable. So we've talked about the keyword arguments, the default parameters, the ARGs, the KW ARGs. Do not worry, once you try like different examples, you would get it in total. Then finally, we're talking about lambda function. There's also a full video talking about lambda function, and I believe that is on day 3. Day 23, we spoke about lambda function. So today, now I will talk about it briefly. This is also an advanced concept. So imagine that you want to find the square of 5. Instead of defining a function, you can just use lambda. So what are we trying to do? This is our variable, which is x, and then what we want to do to it, we want to multiply x by x. So we want to multiply 5 by 5, and then when I run this, we get 25. So these are some of the advanced concepts in functions: default parameters, keyword arguments, ARGs and KWRGs. By the way, I forgot to mention that if you are wondering why we use dot items here, it is used when we are dealing with dictionary, and there is a video on dictionary as well. And then we also spoke about variable scopes, and finally lambda function. So these are 2 practice questions that you should really try. You should really try the practice questions on your own so you can fully understand this concept. That is it for this video. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. And as always, the link to the Jupyter Notebook is in the description, so check it out and let me know what you think of our video so far. We're going! Thank you. Bye for now.